The story begins in the vast and prosperous Ares Empire, which stands tall under a bright sky. In the city square, citizens discuss the recent peace, hopeful that the empire's knights have resolved all threats. The streets are filled with lively activity as people go about their daily lives with smiles on their faces. Two soldiers patrol the stone pathways, appearing to be ordinary guardians of the city's order. They walk side by side, maintaining a serious demeanor as they pass through the crowd. However, their discipline breaks as they struggle to suppress mocking laughter. One guard reveals their true treasonous intent. They plan to kill the emperor and bring down the entire empire. The older soldier listens quietly, his expression hidden as the conspiracy is spoken aloud. While the public hopes for lasting peace, the very guardians they trust are plotting a revolution. That night, a torch flickers in a hidden chamber, signaling the start of the secret operation. A group of armored knights gathers around a strategic map to finalize their plans for the coup. The leader, a scarred man, clenches his fist with determination as he prepares his men for the task ahead. His subordinates stand ready and attentive, their faces set with grim resolve. The knights nod in silent agreement, fully committed to the dangerous path of treason. The leader fixes his gaze on a red-haired figure across the table, confirming that the time to strike is now. A group of armored knights gathers around a map table, their expressions grim as they prepare for the mission ahead. The red-haired commander observes the room with a sharp, calculating gaze. He remains silent, his face betraying none of his inner thoughts. Suddenly, a disturbance catches his attention, causing him to turn his head sharply. As the meeting concludes and the knights file out into the corridor, the commander pauses in his tracks. He waits as a subordinate approaches him from behind, stopping the flow of movement. The younger knight leans in close, smiling broadly as he whispers to his superior. He brings up the forbidden topic of the secret text, speaking of it with a casualness that belies its danger. This ancient book is a cursed artifact, one that demanded the sacrifice of countless lives to keep it out of the Empire's hands. Oblivious to the peril, the soldier continues to chatter excitedly about the book while walking alongside the silent commander. The commander stops abruptly and casts a cold, menacing glare down at the talkative subordinate. The soldier's smile vanishes instantly, replaced by a look of sheer terror as he realizes his mistake. A heavy, suffocating silence fills the hallway as the commander stands motionless. His expression darkens with ruthless intent, signaling that mercy is not an option. Without hesitation, a blade slashes through the air, silencing the soldier in a single violent strike. A young man stands frozen in the training courtyard, gripping his wooden sword in disbelief at what just happened. Sweat pours down his face as he stares in shock, whispering the name of the person he just fought. He looks down at his opponent, who lies collapsed face down in the dirt. The fallen boy remains motionless on the ground, blood trickling from his mouth. The victor's hand remains clenched tightly around the handle of the wooden weapon. His grip is so intense that his hand begins to tremble violently. Later, a furious nobleman confronts the red-haired youth, shouting at him in a grand hallway. The young man stands silently with bandages on his head, enduring the harsh scolding without arguing back. The nobleman's rage boils over, his teeth gritted in frustration at the boy's reckless behavior. Despite the angry outburst, the youth listens with a cold and defiant expression. Sometime later, a solitary figure stands silhouetted against the light of a tall arched window. A massive fire eventually consumes the castle, watched by a helpless observer in armor. Whispers and rumors about the incident begin to circulate quietly among the people. A hooded figure walks away through the crowded streets under the falling rain. He moves silently through the downpour, his face hidden within the shadows of his hood. Heavy boots splash against the wet stone pavement as someone runs through the storm. The runner moves with frantic urgency, kicking up water with every desperate step. Bystanders whisper that the fleeing man is a frontline hero, abandoned by the royal family. He pushes himself to the limit, his face twisted in exhaustion and distress. Ignoring the world around him, he continues his desperate flight into the darkness. A horrific memory flashes through his mind, the sudden drop of a guillotine blade. A scream of pure agony echoes in his memories, drowning out the sound of the rain. He recalls the executioner holding up a severed head as lightning illuminated the grim scene. The memory of the crowd cheering for the brutal death haunts him. Back in the present, tears stream down his face, mixing with the rain. Overwhelmed by grief, he curses the ones who murdered his family. His escape is interrupted when a helmeted guard spots him and shouts an alarm. Now revealed in his armor, he sprints forward while a squad of soldiers gives chase. He pauses for a moment, sweat dripping down his face as he catches his breath. He stands before a massive doorway, bracing himself for what lies ahead. In the chaos of battle, an enemy soldier spots the knight and shouts out his position for an attack. The knight tightens his grip on his sword, steeling himself for the incoming strike. Roaring with aggression, the enemy soldier charges forward and thrusts his weapon. The knight intercepts the blow, his blade clashing violently against the attacker's weapon. Locking swords, the knight stares down his opponent, holding his ground against the pressure. With a surge of force, he breaks the deadlock and knocks the enemy soldier off balance. Panic fills the soldier's eyes as he realizes he is completely exposed to a counterattack. Cursing his opponent, the knight delivers a lethal slash across the soldier's chest, spraying blood. Far from the battlefield, a young man nervously opens a door, sweat running down his face. Inside the room, a large figure stands silently with his back turned, gazing out the window. The man remains still, his rugged and bearded face partially hidden in the shadows. He exudes an intimidating aura of authority, dominating the space around him. Heavy footsteps echo on the floor as someone approaches with purpose. The maids nearby recoil in shock and terror at what is unfolding before them. The male servants bow their heads and tremble, desperately pleading as the tension peaks. The maids are startled as the young master walks by, noticing a strange and sudden change in his usual behavior. One maid, struggling with a heavy pile of laundry, freezes in shock. The young master realizes that the servants need time to adjust to his new personality. Overcome with nerves, the maid stumbles and collapses to the floor in front of him. The young master stops and stands over her. She trembles violently, terrified of her clumsy mistake and dreading the punishment she expects to follow. Unexpectedly, the young master reaches out a hand to help her up. He wonders internally if his attempt at a friendly smile is actually making things more awkward. The maid stares up in disbelief, confused by this uncharacteristic offer of assistance. Elsewhere, the arrival of the first young master is announced to the patriarch, creating a sudden tension. The young master brushes off the accident, telling the maid it is not a big deal while flashing a wide, intense smile. The maid bows deeply on the floor in gratitude as the young master turns and continues on his way. He walks away scratching his head, feeling that the interaction was slightly uncomfortable. He pauses to look at a portrait, his mind drifting to the resentment he held toward his father in his previous life. A sharp, confident grin spreads across his face as he prepares for what comes next. He arrives at the patriarch's office, where a servant announces him and opens the heavy double doors. As the doors open, the young master's expression turns serious, and he feels a moment of nervousness. Inside the room, the imposing figure of the patriarch stands silhouetted against the window, waiting in the shadows. A mysterious figure stands silhouetted against a bright light, their back turned to the viewer. A hand clenches tightly into a fist, betraying a sense of hidden tension. The heavy door creaks open, signaling an arrival. A young man with bandages wrapped around his head enters the room, offering a polite smile. He finds a large man in a fur cloak standing silently before a tall window. The figure begins to turn, his heavy robes sweeping across the floor. The young visitor stands respectfully near the entrance, facing the imposing man. His smile falters, replaced by a look of uncertainty and awkwardness. He swallows hard, his throat tightening with sudden nervousness. The large man turns fully to reveal himself as the patriarch of the House of Baron McLean. The young guest breaks into a cold sweat, clearly intimidated by the patriarch's presence. The patriarch stares ahead with a stern and serious expression. He speaks of ambitious goals to strengthen his military forces and develop better weapons. His eyes burn with fierce intensity as he declares his ultimate strategy. However, the reality is a dilapidated castle with a crude banner desperately announcing that the estate is open for business. The narrator foreshadows a significant incident involving a mysterious woman that is destined to occur in 3 months. In the present, the bandaged protagonist stands before the clan leader, asserting his right to prove his martial abilities and have a voice. He places a hand on his chest and argues passionately, insisting that his lack of progress is not due to a lack of effort. The imposing leader listens to the young man's plea and offers a skeptical, non-committal response. The protagonist freezes with anxiety, sweating as he waits for a definitive judgment. The leader closes his eyes and shakes his head, appearing to be unimpressed or disappointed. He abruptly turns his back on the young man, signaling that the conversation is over. However, the leader stops in his tracks before walking away, glancing back with a serious expression. The protagonist's eyes widen in shock, fearing that he has been completely dismissed. He gasps and reaches out desperately, trying to stop the leader from leaving. The leader stands motionless in the light, letting the silence hang heavy in the room. The protagonist looks on in confusion, unsure why the man has suddenly paused. He waits with bated breath, watching the leader's back for any sign of intent. A hidden smile curls the leader's beard, revealing that he is actually pleased by the boy's spirit. The protagonist beams with relief and joy as the leader finally grants the permission he sought. The red-haired young man pauses at the door, glancing back over his shoulder before leaving. Inside the room, a figure wrapped in a thick fur cloak stands silently by the window. He listens to a parting comment telling him to stay warm. A gentle, confident smile crosses his face in response. Having arrived at a secluded spot in the forest, he drops his heavy bag and sword onto the ground. He looks up at the massive trees, noting that this restricted family territory offers the perfect privacy for his plans. Wasting no time, he crouches down and begins rummaging through his belongings. His hand finds the worn cover of a thick old book. He pulls the book out, holding it up with a look of intense excitement. This volume contains the secret techniques of the ancient hero who once slew the evil dragon. He hugs the book affectionately, unable to believe he is holding the story he wrote once again. Setting his excitement aside, he stands tall and places a hand on his chest to focus. He clenches his fist, and a brilliant golden light begins to glow around his hand. The magical energy surges, swirling around his entire body as he stands in the clearing. He feels the power responding, confirming that his theory was correct. The red-haired man's eyes widen in sudden shock as he feels a change within his body. His expression shifts to intense focus as he tries to comprehend the sensation. A brilliant light bursts from his chest, and he is baffled by how quickly a core of force has manifested. He swings his weapon with vigor, energy swirling around him as he tests his new capabilities. Deep within him, the newly formed core pulses with vibrant, living power. Thrilled by this unexpected success, he clenches his fist and smiles triumphantly under the bright sky. He tightens his grip on the sword hilt, his mind racing with the possibilities of his strength. With a solid stomp, he plants his foot firmly on the ground, kicking up dust. A look of pure excitement lights up his face as he prepares to move. He stands tall with his sword at the ready, facing the open field. A confident, satisfied smile graces his features as he basks in his achievement. He suddenly sneaks up on his attendant, who stammers in fright at the young master's abrupt appearance. The servant covers his face in distress, overwhelmed by the sudden turn of events. The young master stands amused and confident while his servant tries to compose himself. To demonstrate his newfound power, he crushes a stone in his hand with terrifying ease. Sparks fly as the two opponents stare each other down, their expressions showing the vast difference in their composure. Logan stands casually with his wooden sword resting on his shoulder, facing the fully armored knight in the training hall. The guards watching from the sidelines whisper in disbelief, worried that the fight is actually going to happen. Gossip spreads through the room about the knight's fearsome history and how previous opponents went into hiding to avoid him. Mockery echoes around the arena as spectators bet money that the coward won't last even 10 minutes. Logan's sharp eyes narrow as he plainly hears the insults and wagers being thrown around about him. He glances back, acknowledging the noise without losing his cool. The knight stands ready, his face twisted in suppressed rage and determination. In response to the hostility, Logan just smiles with arrogant confidence. The mansion's servants watch in terror, fearing for the young master's safety as he prepares for battle. A spectator with pale hair beams with excitement, clearly enjoying the unfolding drama. The fighters plant their feet, readying themselves for the first move. The referee steps in to separate the two men before the signal is given. Stuttering slightly, the official declares the start of the duel between Logan McLean and Sir Dominion, reminding them of the safety rules. He glances awkwardly at Logan, sensing the dangerous atmosphere despite the safety precautions. The red-haired swordsman gives a curt nod, acknowledging the situation. His opponent grimaces in pain, sweat pouring down his face as he struggles to endure. Unable to maintain his balance any longer, the exhausted knight collapses backward. A voice shouts from the sidelines, begging the fighter to show mercy and go easy. As the first match ends, a new, larger challenger steps onto the training ground to intervene. The swordsman calmly turns his attention to this new opponent, who readies a wooden blade. The large knight plants his foot firmly, shifting into a heavy combat stance. An intense, menacing aura erupts from the knight as he prepares to fight seriously. Spectators watching from the doorway gasp in shock at the sudden escalation of power. The defeated rookie is helped to his feet by a friend, both watching the confrontation with worry. Unfazed by the display of strength, the swordsman simply watches with a bored expression. The knight grips his weapon with trembling rage, his energy flaring wildly around him. The swordsman stands casually with his weapon resting on his shoulder, facing down the looming giant. Gritting his teeth, the knight sneers and questions his opponent's arrogance. He tightens his grip on the sword handle, ready to unleash a devastating strike. The armored instructor stands idle in the training hall, having already decided to retire from his position. His focus is completely absent, his thoughts drifting away to what he will have for dinner. Opposite him, the red-haired challenger smiles confidently, seemingly unbothered by the looming confrontation. Suddenly, the instructor's expression twists into a ferocious grimace as he snaps into action. He leaps high into the air, swinging his weapon down at the young man who remains calm below. The spectators watch in sheer panic, terrified by the sudden and intense display of aggression. The force of the attack comes crashing down, threatening to crush the challenger. Roaring with effort, the instructor announces his secret technique, aiming to end the duel in a single blow. The young man's eyes narrow with focus as a surge of energy flares around him. He shifts his stance instantly, his feet moving with blinding speed to intercept the attack. A rapid succession of 3 powerful strikes flashes through the air, countering the instructor's move. The challenger breezes past his opponent, landing multiple hits before the armored man can react. The instructor freezes in shock, his eyes rolling back as the impact overwhelms him. His grip fails completely, and his wooden sword clatters uselessly onto the ground. The red-haired victor stands tall amidst the dust, looking down at his defeated opponent. A hand firmly tightens its grip around the hilt of a wooden training sword against the backdrop of the sky. The red-haired man pauses for a moment, catching his breath after executing a swift move. The group of armored knights watching from the sidelines gasp in unison, their eyes wide with shock. Even the servants and nobles in the audience shout out in disbelief at the spectacle they just witnessed. On the training ground, the red-haired man stands tall while his opponent kneels before him in defeat. The observing knights whisper frantically among themselves, admitting they couldn't even track the speed of the attack. The crowd begins to question the nature of his strength, suspecting that he might be a force user. Another knight hurriedly runs onto the field to check on the condition of the fallen man. The victor casually rests his wooden sword on his shoulder, wearing a confident and slightly arrogant smirk. The rescuer reaches Sir Dominon and calls out to him in panic, trying to get a response. Dominon remains frozen, trembling uncontrollably as he touches his face in lingering terror. The red-haired man looks down at his shaking opponent, internally noting that he is still weaker than he intends to be. An intense aura radiates from the memory of the grip that delivered the overpowering strike. The defeated knight recalls the terrifying moment of impact, where he was completely overwhelmed. The red-haired man lifts his sword through the air, testing the motion of his blade once more. A powerful kick slams into the armored knight's midsection, knocking the wind out of him. The impact is severe enough to make the knight cough up blood as he reels from the pain. Without missing a beat, the red-haired fighter readies his wooden sword for the next move. He clicks his tongue in irritation, looking down at his opponent with disappointment. The knight cowers on the ground in shame, while the victor decides it is time for him to give up. Blood trickles from the knight's nose as he trembles, unable to hide his humiliation. The red-haired man looms over the kneeling soldier, his weapon held menacingly at his side. Suddenly, the wooden sword swings down rapidly toward the terrified knight's face. The weapon connects with a brutal impact, smashing against the knight's head and sending him reeling. With a dark and intense expression, the fighter prepares to deliver further punishment. The wooden blade cuts through the air again with terrifying speed. A relentless barrage of strikes rains down on the helpless knight, forcing cries of pain from his lips. The servants watching from the sidelines scream and cover their mouths in horror at the violence. Even the other guards stand frozen and sweating, too shocked by the brutality to intervene. The fighter finally pauses, holding his wooden sword steady against the sky. A young man stands triumphant over a defeated opponent in the courtyard, his wooden sword held loosely at his side. His adversary lies on the ground, grimacing in pain and shock from the blow. The victor rests his sword on his shoulder, looking down with a calm, almost bored expression. The scene shifts to a quiet room, where someone remarks on how impressive the display was. An older, bearded man questions the younger man about his training while standing in a sunlit hall. The two face each other, the older man listening intently to the younger one's explanation. The young man describes how he maintained a specific mindset throughout his practice. A look of intense focus crosses his eyes as he recalls his motivation. He reflects on the futility he felt upon reaching 40 years of age in his memories. The older man approaches him, bringing the conversation back to the present matter. He demands to know why the young man's newfound realization led him to immediately attack a knight. The young man defends his actions without hesitation, stating the man deserved what he got. The older man shouts in frustration, asking if there was truly a valid reason for the assault. With absolute conviction, the young man confirms that there was indeed a reason. The older man is left dumbfounded, unable to process the blunt and unrepentant answer. A guard justifies his brutal actions, claiming the victim mocked him and tried to deceive their lord's bloodline. He insists that such insolence would have become a poison to the family's discipline if ignored. He explains that a strict hierarchy is the essential pillar that allows an organization to function. However, he warns that when this hierarchy is shaken, the entire structure becomes unstable. To prevent such a collapse, the punishment for insubordination was delivered in a single, decisive strike. The red-haired man listens in silence as the reasoning for the harsh treatment is laid out before him. The bearded lord speaks to him, concluding his lesson on the necessity of maintaining order and authority. He emphasizes that power must be respected and that actions require proper permission. The young man accepts the advice, promising to keep the lesson on leadership in mind. The atmosphere changes as the Lord mentions there is something else he needs to know. The young man looks up, puzzled by the sudden shift in the conversation. His confusion turns to intense shock as the weight of the new information lands. He clenches his jaw, barely able to contain the physical reaction to what he has just heard. A memory of a woman smiling radiantly in the light flashes through his mind. A wide, sinister grin slowly spreads across his face as he processes the news. Elsewhere, a carriage door opens and a woman steps out, marking her arrival. A quiet tension fills the air as a woman prepares to make her entrance. The herald's voice booms across the courtyard, announcing the arrival of Princess Rena Wolves. The castle guards blush and stammer, completely struck by her beauty. Despite the grand occasion, whispers arise questioning why the groom seems so unhappy. Rena closes her eyes for a brief moment to compose herself before the crowd. She steps forward decisively, her heels clicking against the ground. Smiling gently, she announces that she will read a letter entrusted to her by the Count. The maids in the hall gasp in admiration, captivated by her elegance. Até mesmo a nobreza é pega de surpresa pela aura que adentra o salão. O homem robusto perde a fala, atordoado pela visão deslumbrante, enquanto sua companheira observa a cena com um sorriso de aprovação silenciosa. O coração martela descompassado, traindo o nervosismo que o consome diante de tamanha presença. O choque o paralisa, deixando-o sem ar e completamente rendido à visão radiante que se destaca no salão. As figuras imponentes se revelam, emanando uma autoridade que preenche o vasto salão e sufoca qualquer tentativa de reação. Do alto, a nobreza observa em silêncio absoluto, lançando um julgamento pesado e impenetrável sobre quem ousa estar em sua presença. O silêncio opressivo não parece afetar sua compostura fria e calculista. Com um olhar penetrante, ele questiona a hesitação no ar, buscando a raiz da súbita perturbação. A hesitação no ar é subitamente interrompida pela entrega do documento, capturando a atenção imediata da dama. Com uma expressão de leve surpresa, ela se volta para receber o que lhe é oferecido, mantendo sua graça inabalável diante do gesto inesperado. O vasto salão torna-se palco de um julgamento silencioso, onde a distância entre o topo da escadaria e o térreo ressalta o abismo de autoridade presente. Sob o escrutínio implacável de quem observa do alto, a simples presença dos visitantes transforma a atmosfera solene em pura tensão. A pressão no ambiente é sufocante, drenando qualquer resquício de coragem e deixando apenas o pânico silencioso. Paralisados e trêmulos, os soldados encaram a própria impotência, sem a menor ideia de como reagir diante de tal autoridade. A voice prepares to break the silence with a significant declaration. The silver-haired woman unfurls a scroll and loudly announces a marriage. She stands in the center of the hall, presenting the decree to the nobles on the balcony. The vast room falls silent as she faces the figures watching from above. An observer watches the proceedings, contemplating how the family will take the news. He imagines the Chiron clan leader simply shrugging off the event. Then, he pictures the old man groaning in frustration at the situation. In reality, the leader on the balcony slams his fist down in a fit of rage. The guards standing nearby sweat nervously, terrified by his sudden outburst. Ignoring the anger above, the woman looks up with a flushed face and asks for confirmation. Tears of happiness begin to form in her eyes as she gazes at him. She recalls a fond memory of their youth, running hand in hand. Overwhelmed with joy, she presses her hands to her chest and sobs openly. The maids behind her are equally moved, weeping at the romantic scene. The red-haired man flashes a cheeky, innocent grin, seemingly amused by the situation. A soft gasp escapes as the tension in the room suddenly spikes. The woman demands an explanation, pressing to hear the details of the unavoidable situation. Tears well up in the silver-haired woman's eyes as she looks upward in distress. The stern woman casts a sharp glance while the man behind her watches silently. His expression hardens, his gaze turning sharp and serious. The silver-haired woman closes her eyes and bows her head in resignation. A dark, wolf-like aura looms ominously behind her, signaling a dangerous presence. The stern woman freezes in shock as a fierce, tiger-like energy manifests in response. Overwhelmed by the pressure, the silver-haired woman stands breathless and sweating. High above on the balcony, the observers look down as the intention to pay is declared. The bearded man begins to shout, unable to contain his reaction. He screams out the astronomical bid of 3 million in absolute disbelief. The red-haired man smiles with satisfaction, his heart pounding with excitement. Consumed by fury, the bearded man roars as his eyes glow with intense rage. The guards at the entrance openly mock the visitors, unable to contain their laughter. Logan pushes past the ridicule, stepping into the hall with his companion following anxiously close behind. He enters the grand chamber, facing the judgment of those watching from the high balcony. From the overlook, a powerful figure gazes down with a look of severe displeasure. Logan feels the crushing weight of the moment, knowing that the McLean family's honor hangs in the balance. He squeezes his eyes shut, fighting to keep his composure despite the sweat running down his face. Above them, the observer grips the stone railing tightly, his patience wearing thin. The woman stands faithfully by Logan's side, though the atmosphere in the room grows increasingly hostile. The nobleman grinds his teeth, his anger reaching a boiling point at the perceived disrespect. He finally snaps, demanding to know if these young people were sent solely to provoke him. He accuses the hosts of using this situation to persecute their guests rather than treating them fairly. Suddenly, the angry outburst is interrupted by a reaction from the sidelines. The nearby guards are completely distracted, blushing and staring in awe at the woman's appearance. A hand rises firmly to interject before the situation escalates further. A younger man steps in to silence the enraged nobleman, bringing a pause to the confrontation. Logan forces a stiff smile, sweat trickling down his face as he feels the pressure of the moment. The sudden shift in atmosphere catches the spectators completely off guard. Logan swallows hard, his nervousness visible as he prepares to face his opponent. Dominion looms over him, his massive presence demanding an explanation. Dominion roars in anger, shouting that the family would be financially ruined without outside support. The harsh truth of the statement hits hard, leaving a look of intense strain on Logan's face. Logan dramatically clutches his chest, loudly acknowledging the insult of being called the kingdom's greatest beggar family. Dominion stops mid-shout, looking baffled by Logan's theatrical reaction to the insult. A sharp breath escapes, marking a sudden pause in the heated exchange. Logan stands rigid, looking as though he has been struck by a sudden realization. He suddenly raises his voice, shouting out with renewed and frantic energy. With a clenched fist and exaggerated passion, Logan continues his dramatic outburst. Unimpressed by the act, Dominion points a finger forward, demanding a serious answer. Logan points right back, boldly making his stand in the center of the arena. A sly smirk forms on Logan's face as he imagines the shock his next request is about to cause. A voice explains the heavy political necessity of accepting a massive payment of gold. The patriarch listens sternly, weighing the cost and consequences of this transaction. Logan reacts with open disbelief, unable to accept the terms being discussed. Whispers and rumors immediately begin to circulate among the household guards and servants. Logan confronts the noblewoman in the hallway, seeking answers to the situation. He looks at her with a mix of anger and confusion, demanding the truth. She flinches under his intense gaze, clearly terrified and hiding something. Later, inside her private quarters, she formally thanks him for coming to see her. She turns to him with a soft, unreadable smile. Logan looks at Rena with heartbreak, feeling his life as a young master crumbling around him. In a moment of desperation, he begs her to run away with him, unaware of the dagger she conceals behind her back. He stammers her name, confused and horrified by her sudden shift in demeanor. The hidden blade is suddenly thrust forward with lethal intent. Logan gasps, caught completely off guard by the betrayal. He barely manages to block the strike in time, metal clashing against metal as sparks fly. A cruel memory surfaces where a woman mocks him, telling him to learn his place and disappear. Logan recalls being confused by her sudden shift in tone, stammering as she thanked him before things went wrong. Without warning, she collapsed to the floor, clutching her chest in a dramatic display of pain. A guard rushed onto the scene, shouting for the lady while looking at Logan with suspicion. In that moment, Logan realized with horror that he had been set up by her performance. The memory of that betrayal makes him grind his teeth in sheer frustration. He remembers the cold, indifferent look of the noblewoman who watched his downfall. Even from a distance, the gap between their statuses felt insurmountable as he watched her. Logan reflects on how he once believed he could slowly fix his reputation and win his family back through effort. However, the family elders simply turned away, offering him nothing but silence and disappointment. He stood alone, facing the harsh reality that his attempts to change their minds were futile. Even the common soldiers ignored the disrespect shown to him, allowing malicious rumors to spread while he was gone. Standing firm, Logan decides he can no longer tolerate their denial of his will or their empty apologies. His grip tightens on the railing as he struggles to contain his boiling anger. He looks down from the balcony at the figures below, his resolve hardening against those who look down on him. The white-haired woman freezes, her eyes widening in sudden alarm. A furious roar echoes from the balcony as the bearded lord shouts Logan's name. His anger quickly turns to confusion as he demands to know what is happening. Logan stands paralyzed with shock, his mouth hanging open in disbelief. As the harsh words hang in the air, the woman groans in distress. She struggles to compose herself, her breathing becoming shallow and ragged. She stands isolated on the floor below, facing the judgment of the nobles looking down from above. Sweat trickles down her face as she stares upward, waiting anxiously. Nearby, Logan averts his gaze, unable to hide the nervous sweat on his brow. The Lord looms over the railing, his dark silhouette casting a heavy presence over the hall. Even the guards standing at attention seem tense, sweating under the pressure of the moment. The Lord turns his stern gaze toward Logan, who looks increasingly guilty and afraid. He closes his eyes in frustration as a woman behind him begins to shout in objection. Murmurs ripple through the onlookers as the white-haired woman stands alone in the center of the arena. She grits her teeth, barely suppressing her anger and humiliation as the crowd whispers. Logan's attention is suddenly caught by a shift in the atmosphere. He stands stoically, facing the scrutiny of those around him. Dominion watches the unfolding events with a stern and heavy gaze. The older man steels his resolve, refusing to back down despite the pressure. Logan leans against the railing, speaking out to address the situation. A spectator reacts with amusement, scoffing at the scene before her. Meanwhile, another observer watches the confrontation with visible distress and worry. The tension is palpable as the figures stand their ground on the stone floor. The situation between the two men seems to deteriorate further. Logan contemplates the situation, seemingly reflecting on the concept of honor. He straightens his posture, standing alone and composed against the backdrop. The house flag waves proudly high above the arena structure. Suddenly, the serious mood is interrupted by a dazzling vision of falling gold coins. Logan's expression shifts to confidence as he imagines the massive wealth he is about to secure. In his mind, the priority is clear. Securing the money comes before anything else. A man stands quietly in his office, facing the door as sunlight streams into the room. Heavy footsteps approach the entrance, and a voice clears its throat to signal an arrival. Dwayne turns from his desk, which is piled with gold coins and scrolls, realizing he knows the visitor. A large, bearded man steps inside, bowing politely with a hand over his heart. The visitor beams with an overly bright and friendly smile, trying to make a good impression. Dwayne narrows his eyes instantly, looking at the man with deep suspicion. The bearded man begins to sweat nervously, his smile faltering under the cold stare. Dwayne recalls the stressful arguments between his staff regarding the estate's shrinking budget and lack of winter supplies. He looks at the visitor and sees him as just another beggar coming to ask for money. The man's eyes seem to gleam with a hidden intensity as he stares back. In his mind, Dwayne pictures himself as a drooling fool, believing that is how the visitor perceives him. The bearded man's expression shifts, looking more serious and perhaps a bit cunning. Suddenly, the visitor laughs loudly to break the tension and begins to explain his purpose. He clenches his fist and shouts with unexpected energy and passion. A hand extends in an open gesture while Dwayne stands his ground, arms crossed defensively next to the money box. The bearded man offers a thumbs up with a forced, glittering smile, trying to act friendly. The young man stares back with a look of pure disgust, unimpressed by the clumsy attempt at charm. Realizing his approach failed, the older man awkwardly clears his throat to break the tension. They stand in silence, the air thick with unease as a pile of gold sits between them. The bearded man bursts into loud, nervous laughter, trying to focus the conversation on the money. In a grotesque display, the young noble mocks the man's greed, leaving the older man stunned and horrified. Behind his back, the bearded man clenches his fist, his hand trembling with suppressed anger and humiliation. Abandoning all pride, he throws himself to the floor and begs Viscount Kairos for help, while his companion watches in shock. He clings desperately to Kairos's clothes, pleading for just one more chance to make things right. Kairos looks down coldly at the pathetic display, while the man hides his face in shame. The bearded man covers his mouth, his eyes wide with anxiety as the reality of his situation sinks in. Desperate to save himself, he stands up and frantically offers a massive sum of gold. He waits breathlessly for an answer, sweat running down his face. Viscount Kairos stands tall and composed, completely unmoved by the frantic offer. Looking at the box of gold, Kairos calmly points out that the amount is only enough to pay off the interest. The bearded man tries to laugh off the tension, though his nervous sweating betrays his anxiety. The redhead dismisses the awkward attempt at humor with a weary shake of his head. Still, the older man persists with his forced laughter, trying desperately to remain agreeable. Standing over a chest of gold, the young man asks if he has correctly identified the problem. He stares intensely at the man, urging him to look ahead at the long-term consequences. The bearded man clenches his fist, his internal thoughts filled with anger and desperation. The gold in the chest is exactly enough to pay off the family's current debts. But the young man points out that this fortune would only keep them afloat for a few more years. The older man is struck dumb, realizing the temporary nature of such a solution. The redhead explains that simply paying the debt now won't solve the underlying problem. He leans in to emphasize that they are trapped in a vicious cycle of borrowing and repayment. The older man stares in horror, struggling to process the harsh reality of his situation. The young man watches him expectantly, waiting for the logic to take hold. With a cunning smile, he holds up a gold coin, signaling that he holds the key to a different path. The bearded man looks away, conflicted and sweating as he weighs the dangerous opportunity before him. A confident smirk forms on his face, signaling that his mind is fully made up. His travel bag sits packed and ready on the surface, prepared for the journey ahead. The servant frantically grabs his arm, pleading desperately to stop his master from leaving. The young master pauses and glances back, his expression unyielding despite the servant's panic. Ignoring the protests, he reaches down and firmly grasps the handle of his bag to depart. The servant watches in dismay, sweat running down his face as he realizes his words are falling on deaf ears. With a dismissive hum, the master turns his attention away from the servant. As the servant continues to shout, the master casually plugs his ear to block out the annoying noise. His eyes narrow slightly, showing his irritation at the persistent interference. He turns his back on the room and begins walking toward the bright exit. As he walks, he composes himself, his thoughts shifting entirely to his mission. He focuses on his objective, realizing that he needs to scout a specific man immediately. The servant refuses to give up and rushes forward, grabbing the equipment to physically hold him back. The master looks down in exasperation at the servant, who has thrown himself on the floor to block the path. With no patience left for these antics, he steps firmly down to bypass the obstacle and continue his exit. The armored knight breathes a sigh of relief, looking cheerful and completely unburdened by the chaos he caused. In stark contrast, his attendant collapses onto the floor, looking utterly drained and exasperated. The knight glances back with a playful, unrepentant smirk before making his exit. The attendant's expression goes slack as the reality of his predicament begins to sink in. A look of sheer panic and strained endurance takes over his face as he tries to maintain his composure. He finds himself sitting before his master, who radiates a terrifying aura of fiery rage while reviewing a report. The master trembles with fury, his face cast in ominous shadow with only his glowing eyes visible. Unable to contain his anger, the master violently crushes the document in his hand. The attendant bursts into tears of despair, screaming the knight's name as he envisions the smiling face of the man who left him to face this wrath alone.